Hey, it's Evan Reese. Let's close out this series on input fields in Onshape. I'm not here to tell you that everything in this video is eminently practical, but I wanted to take this series all the way to its complete limit, the farthest that I could take it. And so today we're going to kind of cover all the miscellaneous and weird things that I discovered as I was thoroughly exploring what's possible with these input fields. Some of it has some practical use and other things I'm not sure how to apply, but let's get to it anyway. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show is something that I actually do think is kind of useful. Check it out. We're inside of a sketch and we've got these dimensions, and if you mouse over them, you can get some comments. So there's a way that you can use this syntax. You use a bracket and an asterisk to open and then an asterisk bracket to close, and anything inside of there doesn't affect the evaluation of this code. So this one still is going to evaluate to 5 inches, but there is a little bit of a comment here, and I can explain what this dimension is doing. The same thing works inside of the extrude feature or anywhere else that you're typing, just like this whole series. And this can be a good way to include design intent with especially your highest level datums and sketches so that you can explain either like what it controls or what you had in mind when you did it, or something like this where it's like what were dimensions to. It's just a good way to capture design intent in the dimensions of your model and leave yourself a trail of breadcrumbs basically to find your way around in the future or for your teammates. And this is especially helpful over using the comment functionality. Like, you can right click an object and add a comment to that object, which is great, but the comments don't follow around they stick with the workspace. So if I have a branch, the comments don't go into the branch, or if I'm in a branch, they won't merge back to main, which is something that I would love for Onshape to dial in a little more, because comments would suddenly become the way that I would want to do this, and may still be the way that I would want to leave this information for myself or teammates, because you can add annotated images and things like that. But it is interesting to know that you can build in these notes right into your dimensions and any values. And if you hit show expressions here, you can get all of them showing up at once inside of the sketch. So that's pretty neat. It's cool. All right, this one, not even sure how to use it, but I just wanted to show you how far we can take this whole concept of, everything is FeatureScript. So let me just pull up a variable feature. I'm going to set it to the mode any. And just want to show you that we can run some classic FeatureScript functions here, even ones that don't evaluate to anything. I'm just going to name it anything I want. It doesn't matter because I'm never going to call it. I'm just using it as a way to inject a little bit of FeatureScript into the regeneration of my the part studio here. So I can use this function, println. I don't know why you would need to, but that's not the point here. I'm just showing you stuff that I think's cool. And if you're here at part 6, you probably think it's kind of cool too. All right, so yeah, I can just, my text, I can just put anything in there. It's a string, print it. It will tell us that it can't evaluate the variable. The reason it does that is because the println function doesn't return anything. So this evaluates to nothing at all. And it's like, that's probably not what you meant, but in this case it is. So if I open up the FeatureScript notices panel, I get that printed here. Not sure why it shows up twice, but it does seem to show up twice. Maybe there's a computer science reason that one of you guys can explain to me. Would be curious to know. Another function that's kind of interesting, you maybe wouldn't expect. Let me find a good part studio to run it in. Sure, let's go back to this torsion spring. And we can put it here. So I'm going to roll back to here, drop in a variable. The function that we can use is the regeneration timer functions. So I'm going to call this timer, and I'm going to say start timer. And I can name this something. I can name it spring features, something like that. I don't know. I'm going to copy that because I'll need it later. And it doesn't evaluate. It lights up red, but it does do things. It didn't totally fail or say like that, like, let me show you. If I put in something that doesn't here, like start timer T, it's going to totally fail. It'll say unknown function. It doesn't even know, but this is letting me know this is a function. It's just not returning anything. So then I can go down here below leg 2 and add another variable, set to any. I'm going to name it the same thing just because I'm not even going to use this one that I added. So I might as well overwrite it instead of adding more clutter. And I can go println, and this is where I'm going to want the exact phrasing of the other one. And same deal, doesn't evaluate, turns red. But if we go back here to our notices panel, we can see that it printed the time elapsed between the first one and the second one. Let's see, it's the time elapsed for basically the features in between. Now, realistically, I actually would never do it this way because I wrote a regen timer custom feature that does this and is a little bit better for a number of reasons. And I'll link to a video about that feature right here. But one of the things to note that's important for this custom feature and for doing it this way is that this one's just going to record like the clock time of when this feature last ran. And this will record the clock, like the difference, like the clock time of when this runs and the difference between the clock time of this. And that means that you can edit anything downstream, and this will not rerun, but this might rerun, meaning that the difference it calculates is going to be way too big and wrong. So you have to find a way to force this one to rerun. So my feature has a button that just resets it. That's a way to just force it to recalculate. Anyway, I'm not here to show you something that I think is extremely practical. I'm just showing you stuff that's cool, kind of mind-bending. So it might open up ideas for you. I don't want to limit what I teach just to stuff that I know you know how to use. I want to hear from you how you're going to use this stuff. Another one that may or may not come in real handy, we don't need to linger on it, is the fact that you can convert anything to a string. So if I have, you can use the toString function. And if I put 3 plus 6 in here, it's going to evaluate 3 plus 6 and then create a string that says 9. So it actually evaluates to a string that's 9. And so that can be useful for downstream features. Like I have a part name custom feature. There's other custom features that take strings and do things with them. And it can be a good way to go. So if I had, some long series of numbers that add up to something with like 8 decimal points, I can always add a round function inside of here, and so on and so on. And you can build it, but then make sure that whatever you're putting out is a string. Could be handy. I've used it. Since we covered arrays so thoroughly in the last video, I do want to show another way to, since we covered functions so thoroughly in the last video, I do want to show something else that you can do with a function. And we can actually use a function as an argument in a function. There's a function called mapArray, and it lets you take an array of values like this. So I've produced an array of values from 0 degrees to 180 degrees using 100 steps. So it's going to just divide it up into 100 even steps, linear. It'll be a linear change. And inside of here, I've used a function called mapArray. The first argument is that range itself, and then the second argument is a function in and of itself. And I could put a variable that is this function here as well. But I have put in a function that is going to give us the cosine and do some other math to that to just edit the values in this array. And it just runs, basically, it goes through each item in the array and runs it through that function and then returns the result. And it just gives you back an array with all the numbers manipulated. So that's how I'm generating this list here. If I were to suppress that, see this one's returning, if I mouse over it, look at that first value, 13 inches. I'm doing enough stuff that I'm converting degrees to inches here. So mapArray, it can be useful if you already have an array and you need to do stuff to each item inside the array. You can use mapArray instead of having to come up with some sort of feature patterning loop or something. All right, something else pretty wild that I want to show you that you can do is there's a number of functions in FeatureScript that work with regular expressions. And a regular expression is like its own kind of scripting language that evaluates strings of texts and sees if they follow certain rules or can replace things that follow a certain pattern with other things that follow other patterns. So if you've ever typed your email in a place and it says, that's not a valid email, they're using a regular expression to evaluate that. And I thought we could try and use a phone number here. Let me just first show you how I would even know what to type, whether this function exists or not. Just want to remind you how to do that. So I'm going to go to the Help menu, FeatureScript documentation, standard library documentation. And I touched on this briefly in a previous video, but everything in here is FeatureScript, and it's all available to you inside of these fields. Now, I will note that anything that's going to need context as an argument is not going to work for us. Context it's reserved. We're not allowed to use that word because it means basically everything in the Part Studio. And when you use a derived feature, you're taking one context and pulling it into another context. So we don't have a way that I'm aware of to get that argument and put it into any of these features. So a lot of these are not going to be usable. ID, kind of a similar thing. I suppose you could find a way to produce some kind of valid ID. This is like a unique string of characters that helps Onshape know what feature is being run or what part studio you're in. Like if you click a point, how does it know that that point is that point? The ID is an important piece of that. But if you're using ID and you know how to produce that and get it into a variable feature, then I don't know why you're actually doing it there instead of just opening a Feature Studio and doing it there. That would be tricky and advanced. You might as well just get into code. But there is a lot of stuff in here that will work anyway, like println and things like that don't need those arguments. And I want to show you where to find the regular expressions stuff. So I use Command F to bring up the find menu, and I can just type regex. All right, and then I can scroll down, and there's a number of functions here. So there's a replace. You could have it process a string and replace a certain character with another certain character or something like that. You can get much more complicated. But we're going to use the match function. And match says, like, I'm going to give it a string, in this case, a phone number. And then I'm going to give it a pattern of the rules that the regular expression needs to follow and check for. And then you can see that it gives us back a map. And the map has two keys. It has a key called hasMatch, and it has a key called captures. And I don't care about captures. We just want the Boolean. This is a Boolean. It'll be a true false. And we've already covered Booleans in a previous video. So you can do anything with this that you would do with a Boolean. So regular expressions are, they go deep. And it's kind of, starts to feel like a dark art. But this is where the LLMs, once again, can do a pretty good job. So I don't actually have to know how to do a lot of regex because they can help me figure it out, and I can kind of vibe code it that way. So let's give that a shot. All right, I've said create a regex pattern for use in an Onshape variable feature that will check whether a given string is a valid phone number. It needs to be formatted as a string, so you may need to escape some backslashes. I've run into issues where it doesn't work because there's certain characters that you can't put inside of a string, like quotation marks, without telling it that this is actually part of my string and I'm not closing out the string itself. So let's just see what we get. It looks pretty good, and it looks like it's come up with something that's going to be pretty generous with us here. It's going to support all of these as valid phone numbers, including if I have a +1, if I use spaces, if I use periods, if I use hyphens, any of that stuff. So let's try it. We're going to just try it. Right. I'm going to create a variable, switch it to any. I'm going to call it regex pattern. And I don't need that semicolon that it gave me. Oh, it's declaring it as a constant. I don't need any of that. I just need everything inside the quotation marks. So let's see if that works. And so far, so good. I'm going to get another variable. This will be our phone number. And mine is going to be a string, 555, 555, 5555. That's not my personal line, but you can try. All right, we're going to check variable. I'm going to set this one to any as well. And I'm going to call it isValidNumber. And here we're going to use the match function. And you may not remember, but we looked at the documentation. The first argument is the phone number. And the second one is our regular expression pattern, regex pattern. And the thing returns a map with two arguments, and the only one we care about is called hasMatch. All right, so far it thinks that this is a valid phone number, and I do too. I'm going to check the final button, and we can watch the Boolean to see if it'll fail. If I put a letter in here, it does not like it. If I put in an extra number, doesn't like that either. If I get rid of the hyphens and add periods, that's fine. It likes that. Let's see if I just mash it all together. Yeah, that works. What if I add an extra number? Nope, too many. Let's see if I can do +1. It doesn't like that, but let's see if I can. Oh, well, that's because I don't have enough numbers. Let me see. That's true. Let's see if it's +51. I don't know what country code that would even be. Didn't like it though. Anyway, like I said, I don't know that that's going to be imminently practical for you. If I'm really stretching to find a use case for it, perhaps you could use it to enforce certain conventions at your company, like a naming convention or part number schemes or something like that. I've personally never actually used it on a real project, but again, I'm not trying to limit myself to things I've personally found useful. I'm trying to share everything that I can and push this to its extreme limits so that you can tell me what you find useful. So if you end up using this or some other function that I haven't mentioned here in a actual practical way, I'd love to know about it. Otherwise, we're going to close out the whole series. So thank you so much for sticking with me through this pretty boring topic. And hopefully you learned some really cool stuff. We're gonna move on to other topics in future videos. So subscribe for that. We're gonna cover things like query variables and more like high-level CAD philosophy, surfacing tips, FeatureScript stuff. We're gonna continue. I've got a massive backlog, so go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.